Hello, gamers! Black Myth: Wukong has officially been released. We're excited to bring you a full review and share some extra details about this game. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay updated. And don't forget to like and comment to show your support. Additional information about the game. Knowing this lore makes Black Myth: Wukong way more enjoyable. With the release of Black Myth: Wukong on PC and PS5, it's important to know that this game is adapted from the ancient Chinese mythological novel Journey to the West, written in 1592. This novel is also the source of inspiration for the famous Japanese manga Dragon Ball. For Chinese players, Journey to the West is a household name known to all, but for Western players, it may be somewhat unfamiliar. Perhaps you only know the name of the protagonist, Sun Wukong, but are unaware of the wider characters and stories in the novel. Playing Black Myth: Wukong without understanding the background of the story might make it difficult to become fully immersed in the game, or possibly diminish the surprise of seeing some characters or plot elements that appear in Black Myth. Who is Sun Wukong, the Monkey King? Just as the game title suggests, Sun Wukong is the protagonist of Journey to the West. The novel tells the story of the monkey Sun Wukong and his fellow disciples, Zhu Beiji, a pig, and Sha Wujing, escorting their master, Tang Sanzang, on a pilgrimage to the West to obtain sacred Buddhist scriptures. The novel consists of 100 chapters and narrates how Sun Wukong and his companions go through 81 trials and tribulations, ultimately reaching the Western paradise, meeting the Buddha, and obtaining the true scriptures from him. The novel is almost styled like 81 levels in a video game. As the protagonist of the novel, Sun Wukong is not only highly skilled in martial arts, but also possesses a magical power known as the 72 transformation, which allows him to transform into anything including insects and animals, an ability that appears early on in Black Myth. And of course there is his famous weapon, the staff Rui Jingu Bang, which he acquired from the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. As described in the novel, the Jingu Bang weighs 13,500 cattles, and its swing can be lethal, causing serious injury upon a hit. It can also be shrunk or enlarged at will, small enough to fit into Wukong's ear and large enough to reach the sky. However, on the journey to escort Tang Sanzang to obtain the sacred scriptures, there is a need to prevent Sun Wukong's feral nature from taking over. Guanyin Bodhisattva placed a golden hoop on his head and taught Tang Sanzang the tightening spell. When necessary, they must recite this spell and cause the hoop to constrict, inflicting unbearable pain on Wukong's head and forcing him to obey Tang Sanzang's instructions. In a twist, the protagonist of Black Myth: Wukong isn't Sun Wukong but the Destined One, though his adventure in the game follows in Sun Wukong's footsteps. But the characters who traveled with Sun Wukong reappear in the game, and their adventures and hardships from the original novel should help clarify their importance in Black Myth. Additionally, in Black Myth, you will encounter many characters from the novel who have old ties with Sun Wukong, such as the Bull King from the Flaming Mountains. In the novel, before Sun Wukong escorted Tang Sanzang to obtain the scriptures, the Bull King and Sun Wukong were sworn brothers. His wife, Princess Iron Fan, possesses a magical treasure called the Banana Leaf Fan, or Plantain Fan, which was later borrowed by Sun Wukong to extinguish the fire on Flaming Mountains. At the end of the game's final trailer, there are 4 figures that resemble heavenly deities who are the 4 heavenly kings, the guardians of the world from Buddhist legend. They are the most powerful warriors by the side of the Jade Emperor in the novel. How they will appear in the game and what kind of earth-shattering battle they will have with the Destined One is a surprise best left for the game. How Black Myth's bosses are inspired by Journey to the West. In the game, players will also encounter different enemies and bosses, all of whom are inspired from Journey to the West. For instance, the final boss of the first level in the game, the Black Bear Gwai, is a large black bear with fire attacks. The battle arena is also filled with flames everywhere, and when facing his terrifying flame attacks, it's difficult to keep from stacking fire damage and roasting alive. But if you can find an item called the Fireproof Mantle earlier in the game and equip it during the battle, you will find that you can avoid all flame damage. This significantly reduces the difficulty of the fight, allowing you to focus on countering the Black Bear Gui's attacks, quickly identify his weaknesses, and defeat him. And this Fireproof Mantle is indeed derived from the original Journey to the West. In the novel, the Elder Jinshi of the Guanyin Temple, in order to seize Tang Sanzang's Kazia robe, set fire to the temple, intending to burn Tang Sanzang and son Wukong to death. Son Wukong borrowed the Fireproof Mantle from the four heavenly kings to protect Tang Sanzang from the disaster. This plot not only explains the origin of the Fireproof Mantle, but also helps you understand the character of the Elder Jinshi, who appears in the secret map of the first chapter. So when you encounter an enemy in the game that is particularly difficult to deal with, you might try to search for his story in the original novel, as it could be helpful for you to defeat him. What are Yaoguai and Long? As a game from Chinese developer, GameScience, Black Myth, Wukong features a lot of terminology from the original Chinese that was then translated into English. Whereas Japanese games have introduced a variety of Japanese language words into the gamer lexicon, there will likely be some Chinese terms you'll encounter for the first time. In Black Myth, Wukong, players will encounter some novel words, such as Yaoguai or Guai. You might not know the meaning of this word, or even how to pronounce it. Yaoguai comes from the Chinese pinyin for the character Yaogai, which means monster in English, and the correct pronunciation is J-Gui. While you might know the word Long better as dragon. In Black Myth, Wukong, the use of Long is firstly because it specifically refers to dragons from the east, and secondly, because its pronunciation is very similar to the Chinese word for dragon. Additionally, there are some classic props and weapons in the game that also directly adopt the naming method of pinyin, such as Sun Wukong's classic weapon, the Jingu Bang, which is also directly used in its pinyin form. As the first AAA game from China, seeing these unfamiliar words might feel a bit strange. But when Western players were first exposed to Japanese games, words from Japanese such as ninja, samurai, katana, and manga quickly became common terms in English. One day, when Western players and Chinese players talk about Black Myth, Wukong, discussing the key terms in the game, they will hopefully find common terms they recognize there also. Dive deeper. In addition to recommending the original novel, I highly recommend that everyone read the portraits in the journal during the game. This section will record every enemy you beat and NPC you encountered in the game, with a short story behind their origins. The truth behind the main character, the Destined One, is also hidden within these short stories. Black Myth, Wukong Review. A great action RPG that feels like God of War for Chinese mythology. Black Myth, Wukong is not a Souls-like. It's a third-person action RPG based on the classical Chinese novel Journey to the West, and it isn't particularly hard. It flows like the modern God of War games, not just because of all the gods around, but also the mix of color-coded gear, character skill trees, and linear paths with half-open sections attached. It is first and foremost an adventure, more inviting than punishing. But it does take a page from the Book of Su-likes by hiding a ton of content from you, including some of the best moments and most challenging encounters. You could blast through Black Myth, Wukong as a 20-hour boss rush, but you could also spend over 40 hours hunting down every boss, collectible, and NPC. A full half of the game is in the margins. I gave myself time to backtrack, and I'm glad I did, but as I reflect on Black Myth, Wukong after 34 hours, the stuff I know I didn't find hogs a lot of my headspace. That said, most of what I found was good, often great. Black Myth, Wukong can be incredibly frustrating on occasion, but it's an overall rock-solid action RPG with dozens of fantastic bosses in an absorbing, refreshingly weird world. A world worth wandering. You play as a staff-wielding monkey warrior known as the Destined One, following the footsteps of the late legend Sun Wukong by collecting his 6 relics, or senses. This pursuit takes you through 5 main areas separated as chapters, plus a special final one I won't spoil, each with their own bespoke setting and subplot, which you can revisit whenever you want. Collecting 6 MacGuffins is a suitably video game-y way to package a dense tale, and it's a welcome lifeline in what remains a heady experience. Black Myth: Wukong is less of a story told to you, and more a sprinkling of parables left for you to find. It's a matter of verbs. This is one of those stories that feels built for active interpretation over passive enjoyment. As someone who's not familiar with the source text, it feels like starting a book on page 200. One benefit to this approach is that the world feels lived in. You get the sense you're a small part of this place and can't do everything yourself, and the offhandness of absurd events reinforces the mystical atmosphere. It's hard to overstate how casually people just shapeshift into foxes, cicadas, birds, or deceitful disguises. This is just how this world of yaoguai, deities, and immortals operates. The sheer irreverence is hammered home by a cast that's almost universally larger than life. I played with Chinese VO and found even the most metaphor-heavy characters effectively likable, effectively hateable, or whatever their role demanded. This made me wish the Destined One wasn't a passive mute. The English VO seemed mostly fine with a few standout performances, but less memorable overall. The presentation can be confusing, but the ending, that is, the ending I got, as there are multiple, helped several details click in my brain. And even when the experience seems to be on a tangent, it is always eye-poppingly gorgeous. Rather than the way it adapts Journey to the West as a story, Black Myth: Wukong hooked me because of how it reconstructs it as a space. Every area is dripping with detail: lively forests and quiet snowfields, intricate temples and rough-hewn crags. What comes next becomes a powerful lure. There is so much to see and explore, arguably too much to see and too little to explore. Black Myth: Wukong is a stunning Unreal Engine 5 game capable of both stylized art and realistic graphics, but its visual language is terrible. Many levels are oversized and end up spreading encounters and collectibles too thin, the world littered with invisible walls blocking off what looks to be navigable terrain. Where you can and can't go feels bafflingly arbitrary and limiting. This turns those gorgeous environments into minefields of disappointment. Will I find a cool secret, or an inexplicable dead end? Over time, this blunts the joy of exploration. Similarly, many levels are so visually cluttered that it can be hard to make out key items. It's dangerously easy to miss a permanent health pickup, for instance, when it's locked in a tiny gold box on a tiny gold shrine in a dimly lit room flooded with particle effects. Black Myth: Wukong is crying out for a map and clearer indicators like light beacons. Monkey business. Apart from opening anything with a button prompt, your main concern while exploring is hitting anyone that the camera can lock onto. The Destined One is a melee brawler whose fighting style revolves around fixed staff attacks and a suite of more flexible spells. A shared light attack combo connects 3 staff styles that have unique heavy hits. The default smash style spins focus points on overhead slams. Focus is temporarily charged up by holding the heavy attack button, or permanently charged by dealing damage, dodging attacks, and fighting skillfully. The pillar style sends the Destined One aloft, out of reach of ground attacks as he uses his staff as a pillar, with focus attacks prioritizing AoE sweeps. My favorite, the thrust style, has access to fast and far-reaching lunge-heavy attacks, plus a mid-combo dodge that can chain into an invincible follow-up. It's as good as it sounds. You unlock new moves by spending ability points in your skill tree, which is broken up into core stats, the staff styles, and your spells. Most points are earned leveling up via XP collected from defeated enemies, which is separate from the will currency spent at merchants. But some points are obtained through meditation spots found throughout levels. You can redo all of your points for free at any checkpoint, which is a huge quality of life win. I change my build frequently to experiment with different moves and lean into specific armor or staff effects. I was extremely hungry for skill points in the first half of the game, but soon found that maxing out one staff style and sticking to it felt optimal. Combat would benefit from more interplay between the 3 styles. There was no need to use anything other than thrusting style once I unlocked it. Pillar style felt clunky and smash seemed like a worse thrust. Each style also only has a few nodes for new attacks, and there's sadly no way to expand your light attack combo. so be prepared to see the same attack animation about 1,000,000 times. Combat gets a little samey. It doesn't help that many normal enemies are so slow, weak, or easily staggered that they're non-threatening. But chaining focus heavies and slow-mo perfect dodges is so dang fun that I was never close to bored. Sound design puts in a lot of work. The woody thunk of your staff battering a shield, the resonant gong of cracking iron-skinned monsters, the glassy swish as you spin around a boss in slow motion. You feel details like this in the heat of the moment, like tiny rewards for playing well, and it makes duels more impactful. Black Myth, Wukong is at its best in boss fights. There are dozens and dozens of bosses, back-to-back at times, and most of them are real spectacles. Some are rehashed, but the audiovisual feast is delightful. Levels sometimes feel like mere appetizers before the next boss. I did notably beat most bosses on my first try. To put the difficulty in perspective, the final boss took me 2 attempts. The hardest optional boss I found took me 7 or 8 tries. I'm good at action RPGs, but I'm not the God King of space. So as I said, this game is not very hard, though a few bosses seem to be packing comically bad hitboxes. The thing that killed me most was a frankly horrific platforming section that is thankfully the only one of its kind. Build a better Wukong. Despite an underwhelming skill tree, there's deep character progression in Black Myth, Wukong. To go with armor set bonuses, you can upgrade your favorite gear to keep it around, boosting its stats and subtly changing its appearance. I was partial to a double 2-piece armor setup that gave me extra focus from perfect dodges and a parry-style spell called Rock Solid. Your healing gourd, which refills whenever you rest, can be upgraded for more uses and customized through different drinks and soaks. Some drinks heal for less but come with an attack buff or mana refill, for example, while soaks can make your gourd heal extra, mitigate status effects, and much more. You'll naturally increase your base health, mana, and stamina through items primarily found after bosses, and you can further boost stats of your choice using collectible stones that, again, you can reallocate whenever you want. Staffs can be upgraded almost Monster Hunter style using parts from bosses. Equipable accessories called curios bring boosted stats, conditional attack buffs, and more. Gathered materials are used to craft medicine to temporarily boost your stats or cure statuses. It wasn't hard to maintain a stock of medicine for damage reduction, attack boost, and max health boost, and these became my boss fight snacks. And we still haven't gotten to the magic. Spells have cooldowns and cost mana, which is generally only refilled when you rest at a checkpoint, so rationing spells is important. Rock Solid is my goat, but I was also a big fan of Immobilize, which freezes enemies in place for several seconds and, with upgrades, increases the damage they take. Immobilize does work on bosses, by the way, and it's even stronger than you think. It's free damage, obviously, but also a guaranteed moment to heal and a way to interrupt some problem combos. It's also the first spell you unlock, which sets the bar high. You get a few options for your spell slots, with quite a few spells tied to optional content. You can change your equipped spells at checkpoints, but I almost never took off Immobilize or Rock Solid, stubbornly clinging to time-stopping and pseudo-parrying in this proudly dodge-focused game. The most varied spells are the transformations. Proper transformations let you fight as vanquished enemies for a short time, dealing damage without getting hurt yourself since these alternate forms have their own HP. Lesser, Akeepable spirits provide passive stat bonuses and function as special attacks tied to a chi meter. You can sneak in spirit attacks during normal staff combos. And while I only found 5 transformations, I had nearly 50 different spirits, and I'm sure there's plenty more of both. There's a running theme of harnessing the strength of your enemies, and this brings some welcome variety to fights. I'd regularly open with Immobilize, get in a staff combo, finish with a spirit, then launch right into a transformation. You can spend most of a boss fight playing as anyone but the destined one if you invest into transformations. I absolutely loved Black Myth, Wukong for the first 2 chapters, but recurring annoyances and some drawn-out sections began to wear me down around the halfway point. Combat carries the experience. The story is interesting, albeit too fragmented to put me on the edge of my seat, and the world is a wondrous place to be. It's exciting to see such a rich setting, which has gone largely untapped in games, treated with clear love and care by an action RPG of this scale. Despite some frustrations, Black Myth, Wukong feels great and finishes strong. So strong that I've half a mind to give New Game Plus a try, if only to find yet more stuff I missed. Verdict: with strong combat and a fascinating world that mostly rewards exploration, Black Myth, Wukong is a fun action RPG that feels like the modern god of war games viewed through the lens of Chinese mythology.